Assembly's live, so come subscribe. Your soul's in trial, or simply tied. Your soul medicine, it gets revived. The warrior line, soul tribe. Assembly's live, it's friendly vibe. Your soul medicine will give you life. You're a warrior, let's get this right. Warrior line, soul tribe. Assembly's live, so come subscribe.
I'm like, wow. That's something. That is something.
And that creation has saved millions of lives and continues to save millions of lives.
Yes.
But it counters the narrative that Black men are stupid, they're violent, they have no worth. And so not knowing the accurate history of the paramedics is part of the white supremacist blanket in everything American, right?
Right.
And so we have not only Black Americans, but also our allies, our non-Black spouses, our non-Black best friends and godmothers, et cetera, who have a vested interest in uncovering the truth and, making that clear. Because this whole we have to unite garbage, start here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, start.
Don't say you see me as a Black person, but all you see is the slavery tropes in Oscar-winning movies. That's not seeing me.
Right. Right.
See me in Black excellence.
Yes.
See me in how much harder I have to work for the same opportunities that other people have unfettered access to. I'm not asking for a handout, but I want you to respect my drive. I want you to respect that every Black person from jump, if you want to do anything positive or production, will always be sabotaged by white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And this isn't an opinion, it's a fact. It's like a broken record. We just keep learning more and more and more and more. And so the question is, why don't the beneficiaries of white supremacy dismantle it? Because that's not our job. How much humanity do we have to prove before it becomes important? In this, with this specific book, and the importance of the writing of the book, and why I plead with people to read it yourself. Start there. Don't use AI. Read the book.
Please, yeah.
Buy it, read it, practice reading long form, because we're losing that.
Yeah.
But I think a big part of reading is it taps into your empathy as a person that you're not going to get from Chat GPT randomly, spitting out facts. Mm-hmm. Sure, it's great to have the facts, but you're missing the whole experience if you're not stepping into your own empathy and really getting it. So anywho, back to the book. I wanted to call attention to how the first cohort was 44 Black men, but only 24 were able to be there for the launching of it, which gives you a really good idea how rigorous that medical training was. And these are not doctors. These are people who have to do triage in a moving vehicle on the way to the hospital. 9 months is not a long time for that breadth of medical information, but these men were willing to do it, and 24 of them successfully completed it. I think that's pretty impressive. So Freedom House crews responded to thousands of calls in Pittsburgh Hill District, saving over 200 lives in their first year alone. Then the service became a national model, and its medically skilled paramedics set standards for which was later adopted nationwide. When it went nationwide, it was no longer Freedom House. It became the EMS system that we now know, because it was stolen and jobs weren't offered. to Black men who started the whole thing. The racism and institutional fallout. Despite the success, Freedom House faced intense opposition based on racism. Local police, political figures, and white-controlled institutions undermined the service. Shocker, right? Because that's the sabotage right there. They wanted to sabotage it because we can't let Black people do this great thing. We have to take ownership of it.
Normalcy. Yeah. What they do. It's how they roll. Yeah.
The newly expanded city-run ambulance system absorbed Freedom House, but stripped it of control and sidelined its experienced legacy Black staff. Culture vulture. That makes me so angry, because not only do the inventors of it lose that generational wealth, how many jobs did that rob the Black community of in the 60s? Civil Rights Act was signed in 1965. Black women finally got access to the ballot box in 1965. So now we're looking for upward mobility. This invention was created by someone Black in a Black community, giving jobs to Black men to support their families. The Black men who weren't terrorized, murdered, and tortured by racists pre-civil rights. Not saying it didn't continue after, but just highlighting that point. This is where it all starts to make sense, right? Because you and I are of this generation.
Yeah.
So whenever there's any type of Black progress, it's always immediately followed with white violence. I want you to remember that. Black progress is always followed by white violence. President Obama and the current felon. Black progress, white violence. I promise you, as the day is long, any event, any invention, any form of excellence, Jesse Owens, I want you to really pay attention to what happens after that. The punishment comes. So in this case, something was invented that really benefits our entire country. But still, there has to be a punishment. So the writer of the book spotlights figures like John Moon, Nancy Caroline, and Peter Safer, weaving personal stories with systemic injustice. And he shows how Freedom House revolutionized the EMS, yet was ultimately dissolved. Its achievements forgotten until this book came out. It was intentional that paramedics weren't taught this truth. And so for him to even write this book, I think is a very powerful thing that you're holding in your hands. And it's important. It's important to to tap into your own empathy, but also have compassion. Have compassion for the people you say you see, and you say you understand, and you say you want to help. But really, the intent behind Freedom House was to help everyone, starting with the Black community, who, as we already know, regardless of your generation, help doesn't really come for Black people. Black people pay taxes. They pay sales tax. They pay income tax. They're contributing members of the workforce. But we don't really get the services that we pay for. And that's what created this necessity. Out of that was born this. And now I'll let you go.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing about what he wrote about is this is not a. What struck me when I talked to my wife about it, because we always discuss things. When I read a chapter, I discuss with her, and and putting what struck us so deeply is this wasn't a microchip. This wasn't a golf ball. This wasn't football or even basketball. These people, when you talk about these things, you got to understand what no precedent means.
Mm-hmm.
That means it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was no. We have an example of how to do things. We have an example of how to do whatever we're doing. Teaching people been teaching school for hundreds of years. People been doing. We have when you talk about they were going to the scene. They brung medical care from the hospital to the street, to what they call the pavement. They brung your CPR to the pavement. This was all stuff that wasn't present. These people, the class you talk about, the rigorous class you talked about, was not done. It was
Right.
nothing before them. There was no
Right.
class before them. So we have to understand that this was not something let's look at them. No, they were doing it. They were creating it. They were
Mm-hmm.
and they were the originators of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's powerful. And as a preacher, Kevin Hazard did a great thing that really struck me deeply. He talked about how when Jesus did a parable, when the lawyer stood up and asked Jesus, "Who's my neighbor?" Jesus called the first paramedic, because Jesus told a parable how a man had got beaten up by robbers and left for dead, and how one priest walked on the other side and one priest looked at him, but one man stopped, bandaged him up, and took him to a place of safety. He was the first paramedic.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about life, the point I want to make about this book, the thesis I got about this book is these men gave us a system that saved our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if they come personally. They invented the system that saved our lives. Because if you had a heart attack in your home back then, you most likely was going to die. If you had a heart attack or stroke in your office back then, you was most likely going to die. If you had a heart attack or something on the football field, or had whatever, I'm breaking down all the things that you can have back then. If it wasn't in the hospital, you most likely was going to die.
Right.
These men created the program. We're so materialistic. Forget about who buildings and who built the car and all that stuff. These men did something that saved our lives. And for me, it did not exist. The year I was born, it did not exist. It was not there. It was no built. It was no example to look for. And this is powerful because they sit in the country still, that the power of white supremacy is so powerful that they said, we're going to erase you, dismiss you, and take it and do it. These people have to fight for it. These people have to fight for ambulance. And then when people start seeing in Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh was called the Mississippi of the North. And we buy this too. This little digression. We buy this too. That the North the North is just as white supremacist as the South. They just do it a different way. Pittsburgh was called the Mississippi of the North. And so when white people start seeing it, hey, these black men out here in the Hill District, which is a part of Pittsburgh, they out here running these ambulance services. What's going on? Okay, why are we dying?
Right.
My last point is, it was so powerful. Hazard writes about when they went to a white woman was having a heart attack. And TV shows don't do it right. When you having a heart attack and they come in there and they diagnose your heart, they don't just, oh ma'am, unbutton your blouse, and no, they rip stuff. And it ain't about modesty then, because they got to go to work. And a white woman walking and saying, "You're not going to touch me, but you're dying. You're still black."
Simply tied. So medicine, it gets revived. The warrior line, soul tribe, assemblies vibe, it's friendly vibe. So medicine will give you Assembly's live, so come subscribe. Your soul's in trial.